Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we have a top 16 breakdown for the European regionals that happened online this past weekend. There were 3 large regionals, and we're going to be covering all of them on this channel in the next couple days. So if you guys are interested, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, and make sure to check out my website where all the deck lists for all 3 events will live. So going into this event, it was again online. It was hosted by Organized Play Events, and it was live streamed on their Twitch. The VOD is not published, and I'm not sure if they're going to republish it somewhere on YouTube, but it was also streamed in Italian and German by 2 additional casters as well. So if you guys want to check those out, it does have all the gameplay for it, and you do not technically have to know the language if you guys want to see the gameplay, so highly recommend checking that out. And again, 492 players, and also all the deck lists are on Limitless, so if you guys want to see any additional list, go for it. I highly recommend that, and do appreciate them all being here on this online platform. So, but going over specifically the top 16 for this event, we did have 5 Trafalgar Laws, 4 Zoros, 3 Newgates, 1 Donquixote Doflamingo, 1 Stardeck Croc, 1 Katakuri, and 1 Kaido. And Donquixote was able to take it, but look at this pie chart. Look at this 75% red that we see here. It's quite wild. And if we look at like the 8-1, it's all red. It's all red in here, which is not great if you don't like red, which I've been slowly liking less and less as we continue to see it in this meta. And if we look at the leader breakdown as well, which we do have, we have 91 Newgates, 85 Katakuris, 80 Laws, 56 Dofis, 47 Zoros, 38 Stardeck Crocs, 34 Rebeccas, 20 Queens, and 41 in that other column. So we do see, like, for even red, like, it's about 50% of the meta based off this of, you know, just the Newgate, the Law, and the Zoro. But again, it was taking up 75% of this top 16, which is a little absurd. So otherwise than that, Katakuri, I still think, just kind of forces itself into top 16s and being into that kind of 7-2 bracket, just because there's just so many people on it that it's a little bit tricky for it to not get kind of there. 1 Donquixote Doflamingo, which was moderately popular at 56, and then also we did have you know, very few Kaido players, so being able to get top with Kaido is great, and then a good amount of Crocodile players. So I think like Crocodile representation to top 16 makes a lot of sense, and then the Dofi, but again, like red kind of overperforms and yellow kind of underperforms based off that, the ratio of leaders and stuff. So we're going to go over the top placing list for each one of these leaders. I don't have the quote unquote real names for a lot of these players, since most of the list were under usernames and gamer tags, so my apologies for that as well. I also was able to look at like the unique 7-2, so these were, you know, records to get in the top 16, but none of the decks I saw, and I could just have missed one, but none of the decks that I saw were 7-2 that were also just a unique leader. So if there's one I missed, let me know, but I don't think there are any unique leaders outside of these 6 in the 7-2 or better records. So we're going to go again to the first place list, and we're going to look at the Donquixote Doflamingo. And this is the film package, which has been the, I'd say, more popular build for the deck in general. And immediately off the gate, or out of the gate, the big thing that I noticed is that there's no Guild Tessero. It is not in the deck. It's usually at like 2 to 4 copies. I'd say 3 is like the home that I like to keep it at, and it's not in the deck at all, which is a little bit wild for you. It does get a lot of value, I think, late game when you're able to get some draw and potentially like find your Donquixote Doflamingos, which are like the lifeblood of the deck, that you have to kind of see this against some matchups to win. And the fact that this card is not searchable and you don't have a lot of draw, especially outside of Guild, this deck is kind of a little bit like you have to see this card, and if you don't, it's a little bit tricky again in some of those matchups. So otherwise, you do get a lot of value. You know, we do play, you know, if you see Nami on curve, we do get to play Protect the Nami, get a lot of card draw from this, and we do get a good amount of cards to find off of it. We do play 5 copies of Queen, which I do like as a way to kind of facilitate the effect of like not having Guild. This is like a slightly worse Guild, but it does get the effect immediately, and it's a 6k body, and it's a blocker, which is quite nice. We play only 1 Thunderbogwa, which I think is a little interesting since we are playing the Queen. I do like running Thunderbogwa in my builds just because it does let you get the Dawn back after, you know, using the Dawn -1 for either a Queen effect or sometimes an early Utu effect as well. And then, but we are running a good amount of events. We're running 13 whole events, so 4 Punk Gibsons, 4 Spiderwebs, 1 Thunderbogwa, 2 Hell's Judgment, and 2 of the Union Armado as well. So you know, generally, it's just like the same deck that we're seeing. With the minor thing is just like Guild missing, is really interesting, but it went 9-0, and not much more to say for that. So congratulations to our Donquixote Doflamingo player for getting that first place finish. Next up, we do have Zoro, and Zoro, I think, has kind of been waning a little bit in this meta compared to kind of where it was, at least like popularity of people on it from OP03, but it's still doing really well. It's performing very well. I do think against Law, which is also doing very well. It does have some good matchups there, mostly because of, again, Fire Fist being able to get some really efficient removal for some of our opponent's obnoxious cards. Marco also is, being able to not only play a body on curve, but also use it to remove something. Like it's such a good removal tool that we can use cards like Gordon and Otama to get things into the range for you. I think Jambe has been really important in this meta too when we're playing against a lot of more like mid-range tempo and like leaning towards control decks. A lot of people are just putting up a blocker and hope they can stay there, and Jambe just kind of gets around it, which is really, really strong. So same kind of thing for 5-drop Luffy, and some people will play one or the other, and we'll see that a little bit. But other than that, it's just the Zoro that we see. The newest card and the only new card that we run is the one of the Bad Manners Kick Course, which is fine. It's a fine card, and it does help you when you have too many events or just non-counter cards like the 3-drop Rush Zoro that we do run here as well. And I have been seeing, a lot of Zoros that do play this play this card, or they don't play any of it, or they have like a 2 of. And I am really curious to know what the decision making for playing rush cards or not. I've seen some that just jam as many rush cards as they can. I've seen some that don't run any rush cards, and it's an interesting to see such a difference between the two of those. But this one's running for this guy, still a very solid card, and never like the worst card to put in your deck, I feel like, either. It's always going to have some potential for value too. So that's kind of the list there. Congratulations to our Zoro. I also do want to mention there's this 7-2 version of Zoro that I found as well, and this player must only like playing the One Piece card game in like 10-minute intervals, because this is like aggro as aggro gets. We have all these 1-drops. We have 1-drop Sanji from the set. We have 1-drop Sunny-kun. Both of them are Straw Hats. They're also 1-drops that can be boosted with the Magra or the Makino, and then additionally buffed with the leader effect. So very aggressive. Curly to Dawn will probably never whiff in this deck since we have so many 1-drops to find. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 24 1-drops, half our deck are 1-drops. We have Sanjis. We have Brook 2Ks. We have Vistas. We have Nico Robbins, and then 4 of the 5-6 Rush Luffy. And then Gum Gum Red Hawk, which is an interesting choice for it. This is a late game. If we're worried about blockers, this is a good way to get out of pop blockers that they played early, as well as a good card to play off of life too. So an interesting choice there instead of like a red or like a guard point or a radical beam, but definitely worked out, and I did want to mention this list real quickly. All right, next up we have Newgate, and our top placing one in this one is more of kind of like the hybrid build, and I kind of denote it by what 1-drops we're playing, and we're playing both the Namis and the Izo in this build, which means that we're trying to find both the Straw Hats as well as the Whitebeard Pirates. So we will see like a smattering of like 2Ks and blockers for both. One of like the 1-drop Tony Chopper, 3 of the 2-cost Fossas, some Marcos, some 4/6s for both the Whitebeard Pirates and the Straw Hats, and then we have 4 whole copies of Rush Luffy, which obviously is the maximum that we can run for it, but generally I see like at 2 or 3 copies in this deck, and we also run like 3 copies of Ace. So a lot of non-counter rush cards in this build compared to what I'd generically say you'd prioritize playing like your 4/6s or maybe even like your 6/8 Thatch, but an interesting ad there. And then again, red, the Bad Manners Kick Course, and then our Rad Beam and guard points as usual. So some decks weren't playing Newgate, which I don't think that this deck needs it all the time. I do think it is a strong card for what it is, but I think that's kind of what it is as well. So that is the list there. Congratulations to our Newgate player. And then next up we have our Trafalgar Law. And I don't know how many, every time I make a video about it, I'm like, what am I going to say about Trafalgar Law? What card am I going to focus on in this list? And I feel like I've strictly run out. I've strictly run out of cards to kind of talk about. There's only so many cards people run. It's such a small card pool. It's mostly OP01 cards. We're in OP04 right now. We have Dodon and then maybe Brook. That is it. And then everything else didn't exist until it doesn't go with the new cards. It's just a deck that continues to perform and continues to do well, and I don't really know what else to say about this guy. It seems like it's going to be here forever unless any changes happen, and it's just going to be a deck that exists. I don't think that the Imagine power creeping this deck is just scary because it's just already so good and consistent. And I'm again really curious to see if they're going to do anything different with it. But the tech choices for this one are kind of like if you play, like some people play 4 Machinos, some play 0. This one's playing 2. Nami again has been a staple for it. 2 beige, which I have been seeing people getting less and less of the 1-drop blocker beige. It used to be like a 4/4 with Chopper, and then it's been dripping down to 3, and then 2 has been not uncommon to see either, to find room for more techs and more consistent like pressure cards. Nico Robin I think is fine, especially since we play Brook, so we can go Brook into Nico Robin if we want that synergy. R into Zoro, and then our kind of top end that we normally see. So that's kind of my thing there. Sanji is a really good 2K, since some decks are more control heavy, so you're able to use that to take cards from your life and get additional draws when you really need it, which is nice. And that's really all I have to say. So congratulations to our Law player here. And the next up we have our only Croc in the top 16, and this is I think a generally safe list for what we're seeing. Most people I see on Crocodile have decided that the Sentomaru package is the way to go. Sentomaru being able to be a card to, it's really unique. We don't have a lot of cards that look through our deck, or look through it uniformly, and definitely not a lot of cards that play from the deck in the first place. So being able to play this down and then consistently get 4-6 bodies out for the next couple turns, and have a way to, again, since we play the card from our deck, it's technically drawing, right? It's a +1 when you're able to play it. So being able to consistently do that, I think, is very strong. And then because you're able to have like your hand size and like you're not worried about what cards you're playing, you can play some greedier cards on the top end and kind of our event lineup. So 4 whole Sogeking, which is a lot. I've been seeing this pretty often. 4 of the Dracula Mihawks, which it is a shame this is only 7 or less. There are some matchups where they play an 8 cost. You're like, what am I supposed to do with this? But then you remember that you play Kaido that can get rid of 8 cost, as well as Gum Gum Red Rock as well. Red Rock obviously can get rid of everything, but like 9 and 10 drops are, if it doesn't get hit by Mihawk and doesn't get hit by Kaido, you just go with the Gum Gum Red Rock. I think more and more people have been on the Dragon Twister Demolition Breath. The fact that it is really good at getting rid of 1-drops on against aggressive matchups like Zoro and Trafalgar Law, but also like has a relevant trigger late game for some other decks. I think it's just a really cool flexible card, and I think most people I've been seeing have been on it. And then the 3,000 worlds for removal, and also this card's still stupid good for the deck. The fact that we get to draw 1 on KO, and it's usually like one of our best cards in our deck, I think that's very strong too. The only other thing is that I do like running a Gum Gum Rain or 2, since it can be found off Miss All Sunday, and we can, if we're we can't afford to leave any Dawn up, being able to get that like a 2K from our trash on KO is still kind of good for that. But otherwise, I like this deck. I like that Croc's in the meta, and congratulations to our Croc player there. Next up, we have Charlotte Katakuri, and this is pretty much the same that we've been seeing, but there are a couple of interesting tech choices that I've seen. First up is the Carmel, which if you didn't know what this card is, it is a trigger from life. You get to play this card, then KO up to one of your opponent's characters, the cost of 2 or less. Are your turn on play, you just get to draw a card outright. So it's not a terrible card to play going second, just to get a draw and get some cycle if you really need it. It's not a Big Mom Pirates card, so you don't get to like search it out off of anything else, but as a companion to Pudding, I get it. And then there are some ways and some times where if it does get hit out of life, it can get rid of a blocker or can get rid of like another attack, and can really screw up plays against you that like Trafalgar Law could have. So it's an interesting tech and something I might have to try out a little bit. So I think that is good. The draw doesn't happen unless you play it on your turn, so it's not busted broken, but it is something to kind of consider there. And then just again, like what we normally see, Beige, Amande, and Struzen as the choice 2Ks. Struzen and Amande being able to be, it's a little expensive for discarding cards and having to play these cards out of our hand, but being able to use like a Parasparrow late game that, maybe stuck in our hand without a trigger is really nice, and kind of go from there. And then we have our Sanjis, our Randolph, our Parasparrows. We have Katakuri and Charlotte Linlin, and then 3 copies of Yam, which this has been topping enough with Katakuris that I'm guessing it's worth it to run it one or two copies. This build is also a little bit weird because it doesn't have any copies of the Thunderbolt, which is generally pretty common in these decks to help us, have sometimes a favorable matchup against Law. But I do agree that at times it can be kind of, rough in hand as well. But I do like Yamato for the additional heal and removal if you need to. We're running 4 copies of Shirahoshi, and also something that I'm just thinking that Carmel being able to be discarded off of like a Monday as well, since it is a card with a trigger, I think is really strong too. So the flexibility with that, and just having we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different cards with triggers out of our deck. So I think that helps the ratios there too. So that is a list. Congratulations to our Katakuri player in top 16. And to round it off, we have Kaido. And Purple's been in like a really interesting spot in the last couple weeks where we just don't really know the best way to build Purple. There's a lot of different ways to do it, and we see a lot of the same familiar cards in these decks, but the way to do it, the leader to do it, and kind of the overall theme is a little bit different. But I really am intrigued by this deck list. I think it's really cool, and it is running a Water 7 package, which is a package I've been trying a lot in the last couple weeks. I've been using it more in like Yellow, Purple, Croc, but I do think that there are, there's just the fact that this is a deck that does have a 1 cost that searches is already good. Kaido generally wants to go first so we can play our Onigashima, and so being able to play a 1-drop that can maybe trade into other 1-drops late game if we need to is nice. And the things we're able to find are we have a couple 2Ks in the Khalifa and the Frankie, as well as our Gum Gum Jet Gatling and our Top Knot, which I might need to try this card out. I've been thinking about it for a little bit. It's just Dawn -1. You get to return a character with the cost of 4 less to the bottom of its owner's deck. So that's kind of nice. And then you can, from life, play its effect. You still have to Dawn -1 for it, but the removal is good in a couple decks that we see. Against Newgate, we get rid of like an Atmos or like a 4-drop 6K. We get rid of like there are a lot of obnoxious 3 costs in the game right now. There's Perospero, there's Sentomaru, there's Kairos. That kind of stuff. There's like the Nami in the Dofi deck. Being able to just get removed, it is a Dawn -1 again, Dawn -2 for it, but the removal on it is very, very strong for what it is. So I think it is something to consider. You do have to go back a turn, but maybe that's enough tempo to kind of get you where. And I mean, if you get the Dawn back with Onigashima, that's good too. So I don't know, maybe something to try out. But otherwise, Missile Sunday been a fantastic card for me. I think a lot of people have been on this card. It's early game is great. If it's in your life, late game, it's a free 5K body that draws you a card, which is really nice, and it's just flexible for what it is. Besides, it can be stuck in hand because it doesn't have a counter, but otherwise pretty good, especially since we have Gatling in this deck and get out of it, get it out of our hand for free otherwise. And then we have our big drops. We have 1 of the 7-drop King, no of the King from the Star deck, which is a little interesting. 3 of the Kaido 9-drops, which are pretty impactful. There are a lot of 6 or less that this can get the KO on. And then 2 of the 10-drop Kaido, which can just completely do a board wipe. And some decks really can't recover from that either. So that is the list here. I think this is really interesting. I might have to try it out in the next couple weeks too. And congratulations to our Kaido player there. But that's going to be it for us. I hope you guys, again, enjoyed this video. We're going to have a lot of coverage for the other events that are happening not only this past weekend, but will be happening throughout the month. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button to be up to date on this information, and check out my website and everything else. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.